hope for somebody who's in a relationship? Let's say somebody's listening to this or they're watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, like I honestly think I might be in a relationship with a narcissist. Is there any conversation that can be had with this person? Can a narcissist change, or is the best way of survival to get out?
So it depends on the person. Doug, this is where it gets really complicated. And my approach to this has always been to have no agenda, to say, well, if you don't get out, then it's really going to always be a nightmare for you. It's not true, right? Healing's an inside game, right? It's something we can take responsibility for in ourselves, even if we're in a mess. That, healing is possible even when getting out is not, is what I tell folks. There's a lot of reasons people feel they can't get out of these relationships. There's the complex trauma bonded dynamics, but there's also, they still love the person for how difficult it's been. They still feel a sense of love. They feel a sense of loyalty. They have a sense of fear of, if I leave this, what if they turn around and become a nice person for the next person? Now, for the people who leave, it's a different path forward, and it ain't all rainbows and moonbeams. In some cases, narcissistic people don't like to be left. Let's call it that straight. They do not. They have high rejection sensitivity. So if somebody leaves them, there will be hell to pay. So there might be what we call post-separation abuse. The narcissistic person may pass rumors about them. They might do what we call a smear campaign. They may enlist what are called flying monkeys. They talk smack about the person who broke up with them to anyone who will listen. And some of those people will start to believe it. So you'll feel like your entire support system crumbled overnight. So these things happen where you think like, I was just trying to break up for them, but now my whole life is kind of a mess. And so people will sometimes feel as though, what have I done? This is worse now. Some people will break up and feel a sense of regret. So when the narcissistic person hoovers them back in, they're vulnerable to it. And so it's a complex landscape, even if people leave. In the grand scheme of things, Doug, if someone could leave and be narcissist free or get rid of this person and really do the work of themselves, they will feel better. Something that makes us very gaslightable is if in all the relationships we're in, our reality is being denied or twisted and we're being told there's something wrong. It's all our relationships are destabilizing. That makes it tricky. But if you have validating spaces in your life, for example, a strong friendship network or trusted colleagues, just continuing to cultivate that, because the narcissistic relationship is like a black hole. It sucks all of you into it, all your resource, all your bandwidth, all your thoughts, feelings, everything. If you can, radical acceptance means thinking, I'm no longer bringing my A game to this relationship, right? I'm going to have to cultivate these other spaces in my life because these people see me, I see them. It's a mutual and reciprocal relationship. You get to experience that two-way road that is a relationship. So gaslighted is a tactic, okay? And it's a tactic that's used to maintain power, dominance, and control in a relationship by destabilizing the other person. And this destabilization by denying the reality, perceptions, experiences, memories, or even knowledge of the other person, and then doubling down and telling that person there's something wrong with you. I never said that. What's wrong with you? Do you have some sort of mental problem that you make some stuff up? So you see, it's not just that I never said that. It doesn't stop there. It's you have a problem. You got to have both pieces. And this is where people sometimes confuse lying and gaslighting. They're not the same thing. Lying is lying, right? Lying is I wasn't there and you were there, okay? A gaslighter will take that and say, I wasn't there. And you know what? I feel like I'm in the relationship with the CIA. You are the most paranoid, weird, needy girl. Like, I'm over this. That's a whole different game, right? The liar's like, I wasn't there. They don't go on to that second step. Gaslighting is a repetitive kind of emotion. They do it over and over again with the goal of completely dominating someone, so they're fully almost on board with the narcissistic person's point of view. That's what it looks like. It's not these other things. It's not a difference of opinion. It's not holding someone. It is attempting to hold someone accountable for something they didn't do, though. That would be gaslighting. It's a very, very problematic tactic, and not just because someone gaslights doesn't make them a narcissist. By the way, all narcissistic people gaslight. Not all gaslighters are narcissistic. They may just be people who are just obsessed with power, and that's their thing, which probably makes them narcissistic-y, but we wouldn't know until we sort of peered under the hood. So that's what gaslighting is. And many times as gaslighting proceeds, many times the gaslighter will literally twist it to a place where they're the victim and you're the perpetrator, and you're thinking, and people believe it. Like, I'm a bad person. And that's why many people in narcissistic relationships feel like they're bad people.
Like, how can somebody like help take the power away from a narcissist? I've often heard that narcissists are addicted to validation, whether it's positive or negative. What tactics can somebody use to not give the person they're in a relationship with, if they're a narcissist, that much power over them?
Don't engage. It's that simple. Don't engage. So when they're yammering on about something, because sometimes what we'll do is we'll engage. In fact, I have an acronym. I tell people when you're with a narcissistic person, don't go deep, don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize this. So when they're telling you something, we'll sometimes want to say, no, that's ridiculous. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, okay, cool. Yeah. And then you really learn these techniques for disengagement because, like I said, there's not a lot of there in these relationships. You're basically there holding court. I always say like a relationship with a relationship with a narcissist is like listening to a podcast. It's like, they're just blah, 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 blah. The difference is you can't change to another show. And so it's just, you're sitting there, you're holding court. And if you view it that way, you can do mindfulness work. I sometimes when I'm with a narcissistic person and they're yammering on around me, I will listen to part of what they're saying. And then I'll just sort of, if I'm not in a position to be able to do something else, I'll sort of do a mindful kind of what I call a sweep of the room. I'll describe the room to myself. I'll do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 mind. I'll do something to sort of ground myself. I've just stopped listening to them. There's just noise at that point. But that's really the main way you can take away their power. There's no direct route in. It's taking away if you want to stop a fire, take away the oxygen.
What's the blueprint? If somebody's like, you know what, I think I can leave, like, what should I try and do?
You got to remind yourself is there's no version of me leaving this where they're okay with it. Right. So I think what people want is like, I want to do this so they'll like, it won't be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Okay. So you're going to have to, that's another thing you got to radically accept. This is not going to be a calm, one of those rom-com moments where like, yes, well, sometimes we have to go our separate pathways is never going to happen here. Okay. So that's number one. And you almost have to gird yourself for the terrible things they're going to say to you because they're going to say terrible things to you. You got to have the exit strategy all sorted out before you have this conversation. If the relationship has lasted long enough, prepared for the onslaught, because I think people, I was working clinically with a woman and she's like, at the time I leave, I just don't want it to be that bad. I'm like, it's going to be that bad. So if that's what you're waiting for, you're going to be in this relationship for 60 more years. And so you've got to understand that it's like trying to merge onto a really messed up freeway. At some point, you're just going to have to be like, I hope someone lets me in. That's the situation. That's the blueprint. And it is having support and it's being realistic and and then understanding it's just simply not going to be easy.
And how does somebody rebuild their self-esteem after it's been crushed in a narcissistic relationship after they exit it?
I think that there's multiple things that can happen. I think first of all is actually to reacquaint yourself with yourself. I tell people if you've been in a narcissistic relationship, if it's been a year or longer, if your relationship has lasted, whether it's 12 months, 12 years, by yourself. And the reason for that is this. Whatever patterns got set in that relationship, they're still raw. And the self gets lost. And you're not going to find yourself on someone else's time. That's a solo journey. And so it is a chance to sort of cut to the heart of any trauma bonded patterns, to go through a year of anniversary dates and all of that and come up, establish your new rituals and routines. It's about figuring out what it is you like. I always say people who come out of narcissistic relationships don't even know what temperature they want the thermostat at or don't even know what they want on their pizza because every decision was kind of taken away. Figure that out. What do you want on your pizza? It could be the most weird, jacked up thing you've ever eaten. That's your pizza. Because what happens after a year of doing that, you're a little bit more in your body and you're a little bit more in your feelings. So when someone new comes around, you're in a better position to be discerning. You need that much time. I call it a cleanse. It takes that time to get their voice kind of out of your head. And some people will say it takes longer than a year. Many clients, once they start a year in, they're 2-3 years in.
A big part, from what I understand, of healing from past relationships and healing in general is finding a healthy relationship and changing patterns and just changing how you view the relationship dynamic. Let's just say they've done the work and they've moved on from. What's the best approach for that to make sure that they're doing it effectively? So
in that process, they've figured out who they are. They learn like what are their What are their no-fly zones? What are the things that are uncomfortable? Like you have to, we are not taught to do that. I always call it an excavation. When we think about how an anthropologist does or an archaeologist, I should say, does an excavation, they don't just take a backhoe in and just sort of dig a ditch. They take tiny little shovels and tiny little brushes and tiny little tools and delicately, and that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of excavating all these pieces of yourself and putting it together, sometimes for the first time. Once you're back out there again, a lot of it is moving slowly, letting people know. I mean, one of the tricks of the narcissistic relationships is they move fast. Narcissistic people will meet someone and be engaged in 3 months. Like that's a signature move, right? It's too fast. And that speed means that the other person in the relationship cannot process what's happening in real time. So bad decisions are just being made. It's like if somebody tried to pressure sell you something, right? You need to tend not to make the best decision. So in this case, if person's like, I just want to let this unfold, and the person's like, why can't we do this? Why can't we do this? Say, I just want to take this at my time. And the person's like, that's not working for me. Again, not your person. Actually, what might matter more than what they say is how they say it. Looking for patterns like contempt, dismissiveness, snobbery. If they're saying a lot of dismissive things about other people, if they make barbs about groups of, they say things ideologically, racially or social class wise or anything, something that's not aligned with your values, that's often that's a big one. And people say, well, maybe we just have different values. I'm like, can you live with that? Because there's yes, I mean, it could be the kind of thing where you might have opposing views on something that's not core to you, right? Like they might have a belief of a social policy, like, I don't know that I agree with that, but whatever, like it is what it is. But then there's things that are core issues to you. And if that's a core issue that's coming up, a core value difference, they may be poking and testing. Because remember, these relationships are about indoctrination. So they'll sometimes deliberately offend to see if you step back, or if you kind of ha 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 and kind of awkwardly laugh, because what they're realizing is you're a ripe target. So when somebody's really saying something that puts you on your back foot, I'm like, no, that's not cool. The good money would step away at that point, honestly. And but you are looking for those kinds of patterns, and you're looking for things like comparison. You're looking for somebody who critiques everyone they meet. They make fun of somebody's appearance. They make a rude comment about a family in the restaurant. They're always criticizing everyone they work with. That kind of stuff's a problem. If they keep comparing you to people, that's a problem. Those are the things you're sort of looking for.
The challenge here becomes, Lisa, is that it's almost like we have to start at a foundational level, right? People have to respect and believe in their own reality and respect and believe in themselves, because otherwise you're vulnerable to someone's words, right? When they're going at you, they're telling you you're incompetent, you don't know what you're talking about, that never happened, who do you think you are, and all this other stuff that leaves a person feeling like they're not enough, or that maybe that other person is right, not them. So all of that is foundational work that most people never do. Then you're in this relationship where somebody is speaking to you in these sort of dismissive, gaslighty, manipulative sorts of ways. There's a moment, and this is the challenge, is that for months, if not years, people believe what that person is saying to them. They actually believe that they're all those bad things, or they're not enough, or they're asking too much, or whatever it is, whatever their partner's going after them for. But there's a moment when it's a penny drop moment. Maybe it's someone's gaslighted you. They've completely denied your reality. And on a strange day, you actually record it and you play it back. You're like, no, I did hear it right. And then over time, you start saying, my reality is actually right. And one of the things I say, I use this a lot in my teaching about narcissism. I call it the DEEP technique. And DEEP stands for don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize. And if you can hold on to those 4 rules, which are not simple rules, they're hard rules, but don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, don't personalize. Don't defend is when somebody is saying you did something and you didn't do it, don't defend it. There's no point, because now what happens is you start going down the rabbit hole. And the don't engage part really means that you pull back quite a bit. You recognize that I'm always walking on eggshells. No matter how I say this, I get it wrong. And the don't personalize piece is, this is them, it's not you. And especially the don't personalize piece, that's hard for people. They think it's got to be me. And I'm like, no, it's not you. If anything, you're so empathic that you're easy to take advantage of, because they know you're going to keep coming back.